bring on the Democratic nominee, Attorney General Josh Stein. How are you?
Clay, I am pleased to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, I know you've gotten this question before, but Mark Robinson, he is particularly bizarre. He reminds me of Herschel Walker a lot. He had no political experience before he was elected lieutenant governor. He was a former factory worker who went viral for saying some really outlandish things, especially about Michelle Obama and a host of other things. How did this happen? How did someone like him get elected to lieutenant governor in your state?
I genuinely believe people didn't know what they were getting when he got elected. The year was 2020, and it was a slightly Republican year for the electorate. And that was Trump won North Carolina by 1.5 points. I ended up winning, and Governor Cooper ended up winning as Democrats. But honestly, we were swimming against the current, and I think the current just brought Mark Robinson into office. And as you said, he had absolutely no political experience, no public service experience. You don't have to have been in elected office to get elected to another elected office, but you have to have done something to help people in some form, fashion. And all he had really ever done is spew venom and hate on social media. I believe that in this election, the voters are going to be fully informed and they're going to have an incredibly stark choice before them. They can choose someone who has been fighting for them as their attorney general and delivering victories for people versus somebody who wants to fight the job killing culture wars, which is what Mark Robinson's all about. He would turn back the clock of progress in North Carolina.
And, can you explain a little bit of the dynamics of North Carolina? Again, you have a Democratic governor and attorney general yourself, and but nonetheless, it's really considered a red state to some degree. You have two Republican senators, like we just said, a Republican lieutenant governor. What is the mix? What is the temperature of the state as it relates to the Democratic Party and the GOP?
Basically, if we're not 50-50, we're 51-49. I mean, we're just incredibly closely politically divided. We're the state that Obama won most narrowly in 08 and lost most narrowly in 12. We're the state that Biden lost most narrowly in 20. As you noted, I won election in 2016 and 2020. Both of those years, the voters of North Carolina elected Trump, a Republican. And that makes me the only Democratic AG in the country who represents a state that Trump won twice. So I know how to win here in North Carolina. And basically, if you're a Democrat and you can assure people that what you want to do is fight for them, you can win. And that's what I have been about. And that is not what Mark Robinson's about. He is about dividing people. He's about hating and spite, and it will damage our economy. And then when you layer in how he wants to hollow out public schools, he's telling parents to leave, abandon public education. He actually called public school teachers wicked people. I mean, it's just
Mm.
unfathomable. And he wants to ban abortion with absolutely no exceptions at all, not for rape or incest or the life of the mother. I mean, he is so far out there that he does not represent the mainstream of North Carolina, which essentially is pretty moderate and wants people who are focused on helping them live a better life.
I mean, it's obviously a grift. He had no, like you said, no political experience. The GOP has lifted him up because he, in my opinion, he is a black man who spits out anti-blackness, and the GOP appears to really like that at this point. So it's obviously a grift and a hustle, and I hope nobody falls for it. So let me ask you this: I think it's important that Mark Robinson loses, and I think it's important that you win. But I've done a lot of advocacy around the wrongfully convicted, and including a man named Ronnie Long, who spent 44 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit. And Ronnie Long's lawyer said that you fought endlessly to uphold his conviction. Thankfully, he was eventually released a month after his mother died. But what's your response to that? That people felt like when it came to Ronnie Long and other wrongful convictions that you really weren't an advocate?
Well, each case is unique, and in that case, obviously eventually followed with what the court ordered. There have been other cases where essentially we have taken a knee for the state in the interest of justice. I mean, that's what justice is all about. It's about getting to the right result, not just trying to keep people locked up. And so that's what we've tried to do in every instance, is to do what is right in each specific case. Obviously, there will be cases where people look at the facts and come to different conclusions, but that has been a fundamental goal of what we've tried to do at the Department of Justice.
Do you have any regrets the way the Long case was handled by your office?
I don't. I don't.
Hmm. What would you do differently for wrongful convictions in the state of North Carolina? I mean, I believe they have a compensation of $750,000, which I think is really low. Would you try and change anything for wrongful convictions in the state?
I mean, one thing, I co-chaired the governor's task force for racial equity and criminal justice, and I did that along with Justice Anita Earls of the North Carolina Supreme Court. And our mandate was to have a broad group of stakeholders representing the full spectrum of criminal justice and actors, from justice-involved people to prosecutors to public defenders to sheriffs to criminal justice advocates. And we work to identify disparities in the criminal justice system, propose recommendations, and then work to implement them. And we have been hard at work for the past 3 years doing just that. We identified 125 separate recommendations from every stage of the process, from recruiting law enforcement to how they're trained, to how they interact with people in the community, to whether they arrest or issue a citation, to what happens at the first appearance when bond or bail is set, to what happens at trial, what happens at sentencing, what happens in incarceration, what happens upon release. And it won't surprise you, Clay, that in almost every stage of the process, African Americans receive disparately worse. And so one of the recommendations on wrongful convictions was that we stand up a wrongful convictions unit that can review these cases. We have already an actual innocence commission here in North Carolina, that if somebody can prove that they are innocent, that it's not in the typical process of trying to get a discretionary review or appropriate relief through the criminal justice system, around which there are pretty tight rules. You can independently go and have your conviction reviewed for actual innocence. So we have some procedural safeguards, and we recommended that the state have more.